Carlton King is a former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, as well as the geopolitics that surrounds everything. This week is part 2 of the question that we looked at last week. And for those who listened last week, if you haven't, go back and listen to part 1.
So in the early days, he dated that girl, Chelsea Davy. Do you remember? She was from... she
was
Miss Rhodesia.
Right, okay.
And then she was from Zimbabwe. She was Miss Rhodesia,
okay.
but she had a privileged, upbringing. She went to Cheltenham College, I think, and Stowe or something. And, she kind of,
A lesser school to yours.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think she. Do you know what I mean? Like.
I just like to rag you now and then because of the fact that you were going to school with royals. I just like for people to understand.
Okay, and I'll come on to that in a minute. I'll come on to that if I'll come on to that. Right, but what I'll say is, her money, her family money is jewelry, right? And look, connect the dots. She's from Zimbabwe, right?
Yeah. People like slaves working in the mines there, and etc. etc. Yeah.
Okay, so she was like his beau for a while, and then he obviously had a few others that were a little bit less that were a bit more traditional, I suppose. And then you've got Meghan. Now, what I find, I know we've spoken so many times about oh my God, what's wrong with the royals and what's wrong with all of this, right? But at the same time as the press are kind of hammering the nails into the coffin of the Harry and Meghan relationship or whatever. Yes. The rest of the royal family are out on Commonwealth tours, shaking hands with the rest of the Commonwealth, talking about how great it is that we're, that Britain's so global, and all the rest of it. And actually, what I think is interesting about Meghan is apart from the American bit of her heritage, she's actually quite her heritage is actually quite similar to me. She's got a bit of German in there. She's got she's obviously got African heritage, and she's got a bit of British, and she's got a bit of la la la. And there's loads of times when I look at her and I go, well, it's like a slightly rainy day, and I'm like, oh yeah, your hair's done that as well, because mine does that day. And da da da. It again, to go back to the Netflix thing,
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
I think to sort of recapitulate, when you watch it, if you watched it through a white lens, they're villains. If you watch it through a black lens, they're heroes.
What she said was in the second one, and I've only watched 1 and 2, was that she didn't really know she was black as she perceived it, because in her school and studied and whatever, people just perceived that, well, they didn't know what they perceived because they knew her father was white, and they didn't know really what to perceive. Now, this is the difference of the United States now and the United States then, and I think this needs explaining in relation to Meghan. I'm an old guy, okay? I'm born mid-50s, okay? So in the mid-50s, when I became cognizant of racial aspects widely, so the mid-60s, yeah, and I looked at American things, what the Americans called black were people that were 10 shades lighter than Meghan, okay? And they called them black. Because the perception was that even though they were extremely light, and let me give you somebody like Lena Horne example, yeah, even though they were extremely light, no white person had stood to the fact that that was anything to do with them, right? Because generally what happened is they had all sorts in the black heritage, all sorts of different, and when I say the black, I'm talking about now from the Americas, all sorts of different mixtures that they look to. So example, in my family, my great grandfather is white. My grandfather then is clearly mixed race. My mother is obviously mixed race. But as time goes on, if you keep marrying then amongst darker people, then the dark comes out. If you do it in the opposite direction and you keep marrying amongst lighter people or white people, the dark goes out. Now,
yeah, also sometimes it springs back. I mean, do you know what?
It springs back.
I mean,
but depending
I've
on, this is
said
what's
this
important
before.
though. This is what's important because I'm getting where we are. What's important is this. But always in those old days, American-wise, right, you were black because the law now in various states was if you had 1/32 of black blood in you, you were black. Southern states. Wow. If you had 1/16 in some other southern states, you were black. And in some other southern states, it was 1/8, right? But through the whole of the America, it was generally 1/8 in the north and south. Now, in the north, maybe that didn't mean, well, it did mean something for sure, because the north was racist as well. But in the south, it meant absolutely everything if you were black. It meant where you could drink some water from. It meant where you could go to school from. It meant where you could eat. It meant whether the police could just shoot you down dead and not even bother to write a report. It meant that you could be done for loitering, and what that meant is as soon as you're in, they had things called, because when slavery ended, they still needed people to work the farms and work like slaves, basically. So what they did is they brought in laws, things like the loitering law, which after 8 o'clock at sundown and a black person was on the street, you can be arrested, put into prison and put on a chain gang. And what does a chain gang do? It basically works for nothing for the state. So it's a way of getting workers. It's slavery by another name, basically. So that's why you had all people being put into prison and enslaved. So that was what was going on. So you with 1/32 blood in you, yeah, could end up like that. So that's why you had people, they call them people who passed, people who had 1/8, 1/16, 1/32, but were lucky enough, in their perspective, to have a nose in a certain way. And they could then say, oh, well, I'm an Italian, I'm a, whom, by the way, many of them are mixed race, or I'm a whatever, yeah, to get away from being a black person. Or you had people who stood to being a black person because they couldn't get away because everybody knew who their parents was in the local county. So this is how it is. This biracial stuff for America is very, very new. Because, of course, in most of those states, with 1/37, 1/16, 1/18, it was illegal to marry somebody who was of a different race. So if you were black and white, it was illegal. And a black guy who marries somebody would be done for rape for having intercourse with a white woman. Right? So it was illegal in the law, in the statute, codified as such, which is Loving's case, which you will have heard of, and they made a movie about. Up until that, this is like 1968, 1970. It was illegal. You'd be thrown in prison. Right? So this is, it's like apartheid in the United States, in America, in South Africa, where you're from. Yeah. But the difference was every country turned a blind eye to it, saying America was the land of the free and the leader of the free world, when at least 20% of its population were not free. That's why Muhammad Ali threw his medals away. People don't kind of understand this. That's why Muhammad Ali said, and I'm going to use the words he said, no Vietnamese ever called me nigger. Why should I want to go and kill him? Right? This is the reality of it.
Yeah.
And by the way, just on that Vietnam War thing, because it's quite interesting, because when I used to work for the American for their military, it's quite just before the end of after the end of the Vietnam War, it was quite interesting when I speak with some of the old guys who were about. Frankly, very few rich white college guys fought in that war. If you were at college, you didn't need to fight. You could defer your fighting because it was drafted. Yeah, it was the draft. So everybody was drafted into the army. You could defer your draft, and like what the president did, Bush, he basically deferred his draft. He was going, parents put him in college, obviously didn't need to fight, and so then he went into the Air Force, but in the Home Guard, what we would call the Home Guard. Yeah, basically he was in the Air Force in the United States. Didn't go out to Vietnam to fight, no. And that was done by many a rich white person. You didn't fight. So the people who didn't have rights, blacks, Hispanics, those were the ones doing the vast majority. They are massively outnumbered in Vietnam as to the actual numbers in the population. This is the interest of the United States, which we don't talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, this is interesting. And also this in the sort of 360, like just to go back to your kind of previous point about Meghan being like kind of stuck in the middle. Yeah. I mean, I remember being at school. I remember being about 5 years old and asking the teacher had said that we had to draw a picture of ourselves for something, for a display. And there was a choice of a pink crayon or a brown crayon. Right. And I remember saying to the teacher, there isn't a crayon. What crayon am I supposed to use?
Right, okay, interesting.
Right, because there wasn't there was the pink one or the brown one, right? And she was like, well, whatever. And so I got the yellow one, I think, in the end. Like, cause but do you know what I mean? It's like there was no thinking around that. So yeah, I didn't know that about the percentage or whatever, but and let's see. I mean, so Meghan's dad. So he's like what, Irish and he's like part Irish, part
German, I guess.
Part German, part British, or whatever. But and he lives in Mexico, I think.
He does now, yeah.
Yeah.
You see, the thing is, this is what I always say, and people don't seem to understand it. Race is an absolute biological nonsense, right? But, and this is the big but it's an absolute political reality. And you live or die by what this biological nonsense says you are. And that's where the problem comes about. So this is why that 1/32 is interesting. Because in South Africa what that meant to be black, to be coloured, to be whatever, as they perceived them under the systems. You knew what your life chances were relating to that. It's the same in if you go to the other side, you go to Saudi Arabia or go to the Gulf states, they say black people, are only true black people, i.e. very, very, very black people. Everybody else, because they are a mixed race people, are not black. So you see, it's how you spin it in the country you're in.
Exactly. I mean,
how is it perceived?
God, again, I remember being a kid, right? I mean, I remember being about 4 or 5 years old, right? And my granny going to come with my granny, who was white, right? But like, white and Austrian, And she used to say, if she was going downtown in Cape Town, right? She used to say, I'm going to put my Kaffir wig on. Right, and she put a wig on, and then she just like put some fake tan on, and she, so she looked black, so she wouldn't get carjacked.
Right, yeah. You see, this is it, and this is the problem. Once you've the sins of the fathers come back to you, because once you've instituted a situation where 1/5 of the population lives superbly, because the other 4/5 are kept like dogs,
once that system changes, either, frankly, people are chased out of the other 1/5, or there's retribution that comes. Now, it's a massive award, I should think of a better word, for Nelson Mandela, that he prevented that from happening to a massive extent in South Africa. Because how would you feel if you were one of the people who were treated like an animal forever and a day, and now you said, now you got your freedom, my friends, but you know what, everything's going to stay as it was. Right? People are going to say, well, hang on, what have I been fighting for? What was, why was I in on Contour Sizwe? Yeah? Why was I fighting? It stayed as it was, nigh on. What's the difference? This same fella's still running everything. Yeah? This is where your problem lies. Now, the people who are at the top, who had everything, they will see some changes. So they'll think, oh, everything's changing. I can't any longer do exactly what I want. Yeah. So now that becomes a problem for them. So that's the other side of that coin. And it's how you master that middle position, which is, whilst giving the others, because you can't afford to give that other 4/5 everything that the 1/5 has, because the 1/5 lived that well because the others were kept down. Yeah. So now you got to try and figure out how you can slowly change it without one side or the other getting pissed off. It's very, very difficult, especially when you have.
Let's bring in the who can push the button thing as well, right? Right, and let's also let's think about Harry and Meghan, right? So sure. They're obviously living they're considering themselves to be US citizens at the moment, right? So so what happens when someone pushes the button?
In terms of
nuclear war.
Well, I hope we never get to that circumstance. Number one.
Well, let's not. But I'm just saying.
Number one, I hope that would never be something that would come about. I can't perceive a circumstance whereby the United Kingdom wouldn't sit side by side with the United States, because that's what its policy has always been, and frankly, the way we function doesn't leave us the independence without the United States, to be fair, to be truthful. If you look at the Falklands War, without the United States providing what it did, we wouldn't have won the war. Right? That's a fact.
Do you think they would still do you think well, I mean,
there is no independent aspect of the United Kingdom to fight any major conflict in any way, shape or means without the United States.
Okay.
And to be fair, NATO has all been about tying the United States to Europe, because again,
to Europe though.
Yeah, to Europe as well. To Europe, same difference, and in that sense, same difference. Because of course, who's going to be the enemy? Who's going to fight a war across the other side? I can't see any conflict that would happen without. Now, don't get me wrong, Brexit has made a problem. And I'm going to tell you this. Brexit has made a problem.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm going.
I know you are. The whole sense, but it's an economic problem. Now, yes, economic problems can lead to military problems, but it's made a problem because up until very, very recently, before we left, basically everything was aligned nigh on. So even though we were very, very tight with the United States, extremely tight with the United States, tighter than many European countries, we were the United States, the deal was that we acted as that bridge between Europe and the US, and vice versa in the other direction. So there's no warfare there. There may be economic warfare, but then we were with the European side. Now we stand alone. So we've actually lost a lot of our relevance. And before, we wouldn't have had our intelligence services looking at Europeans. Today we have to, because the Europeans are competitors. So we'll be looking at them competitively in terms of economics. But I can't see us looking at them competitively in terms of military. So where's the next enemy? We're now playing up China, aren't we? Because the US plays up China, because the US sees China as a threat to it, right? Because of its economic predominance. So now there's a threat to the US, and also it's manufacturing industrial base, etc., etc., etc. Right? So it sees it as a threat, and China obviously wants to find out as much as it can about the United States in exactly the same way, but doesn't perceive it or push it forward as a threat. Because at the end of the day, let's be realistic. There is only one country who, since the end of the Second World War, has for every day of every year had its soldiers fighting somewhere, and that's the United States of America. China, frankly, has for the vast majority of time since the Second World War not been fighting anywhere. In fact, its troops have not been fighting anywhere. And you should also know that the United States spends, and don't get me wrong, I'm not anti the United States. I was in the in the bloody military, for Christ's sake, working with their military, and I obviously work very closely with them in our intelligence services. But we've got to be realistic about this, because the problem is we're not seeing the bigger picture if we don't. So the United States spends, it used to be 20, now it's 15 times as much. It's more than the next 15 countries below it, including us, including the Chinese, including the Russians, all the others. It spends more on its military than the next 15 countries below it put together. So why are you spending trillions of dollars on military? Why? It just makes the bankrupt in the country.
So again, right, just like silly question, but I'm just asking it anyway for shits and giggles, right? So if there was the opportunity, do you think if Harry was given the opportunity to join the US military?
No, don't think. Look, he's an Englishman, a Brit. He's a British person. I think he's loyal to his country. I think he likes his country. I think he fought for his country. I think he believes in it. Now, he may not have been happy with the political decision, because you asked that before, with the political decision for Afghanistan. But of course, I wasn't happy with the political decision, but I still did my bits, because that's what you do. You don't need to be in agreement with the decision. Unfortunately, you carry out your bits and bops even if you're not in agreement with the decision. Probably because you want to make sure that your people are okay.
Sure. All right. So I mean, we have spoken in the past about the personal protection element that Harry and Meghan have brought up about their story. Yeah. Right? We have spoken about this, right?
Is this in some of those episodes? Is it? Did they speak about it?
Well, we have. We've touched.
No, I mean, do they speak in those episodes? Because I've only seen episodes 1 and 2. They do they? Right.
Yeah,
okay.
they do. They do. I mean, they talk about the fact that their decisions were based on the fact that they were receiving death threats on a daily basis.
True. Yeah. True.
Now, you've narrated and you've vocalized, very clearly that those threats are from fanatics.
Yeah. True.
In the most part.
True.
However, there was obviously, a lot of tabloid propaganda
that incites
that incited those fanatics, that brought those fanatics out, and that's obviously. However, where we've gone with this discussion is also that we'd spoken before about Meghan being the. If there were to be one that had a target on their head, but actually,
you know what? I'd see both of them.
But
she's
that's what
a
I'm
femme
saying.
fatale.
But that's what I'm saying.
But
the conversation we've just had, and this is where I was hoping that we would get with this conversation is and because from watching the Netflix documentary, this is also the takeout I got as well, is that they were both as sort of exposed and volatile as each other, really.
Look, I've no doubt that I don't know her. Let me be very clear. I don't know her. But I've no doubt that she is brought up in a certain way where she's had to make sure she pushed her way through, fended for herself, did what she needed to do, got to be a Hollywood star, etc., etc., etc. To then turn around and sit down and do nothing, I don't think that's in her makeup. I don't think that's in her makeup. To be then told how you do stuff, I don't think that's in her makeup. I don't even think she understood what that actually means to be a royal, other than the positives. She probably thought, oh great, I'll be a royal and we can have a fantastic life, blah 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 blah. And that's me seeing her at the worst. You know, we could do what we want, move around how we like, live a fantastic life. We got all these
But
people
she was a
working
Hollywood
for us
actress, like she
and all
could
the
have
rest of
done
it.
that anyway.
Correct. That's what I'm going to say. She's a Hollywood actress who could have done that with none of the strings, right, attached to it. And then on top of that, you're getting some people turn around saying, well, that doesn't look good, or one wouldn't do that. And then the whole of the press barraging her by saying, I mean, I'll never forget the one I saw. You know, she said she liked avocado, right? Next minute, she's causing wars, avocado, right?
Yeah.
She said some flowers that she liked. When Kate was there with these flowers, oh, look at the lovely Kate with the flowers. When she had the flowers, did she not know these flowers could poison people? You know, so...
Oh, there's an even worse one. Honestly, as a mum, there's an even worse one. Okay, so there's a picture of her with a swaddle, with a baby swaddle. You know, as a new mum with a baby swaddle, like out. I think she was at a polo match or something. She was perhaps out at a polo match, and the press were like, she's holding the baby in the wrong way in the baby's head, like, you know, right, as opposed to, you know, Kate. Like
Kate. Yeah.
Exactly the same thing, exactly the same, do you know what I mean, right? Or rather that, like, the nanny had swaddled the baby up and handed her the baby and all the rest of it, and it was just like, do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, like,
Fergus,
I could show you 1,000 pictures of me
absolutely, yeah,
with a baby, you know, with kids, you know, kids are like, babies just bounce back, don't they? But I mean, I don't want to sound like a flippant or dismissive mother, but at the same time, you know, you could see the love in the picture. You could totally see the love in the picture, but the press were just like, oh my God, she's
Fergus,
like...
let me say something to you. You have been to one of the best schools in this country for females.
Ha! Right, okay.
For females. You've been at school with royals, right? Okay.
I have.
Let's okay. I'm not going to say whom, because it's up to you whether you want to say or you say not. Right. So you have the advantage of the ruling elite. What I'm going to say to you is this: let's be absolutely now upfront and realistic. Let's be it. There's some lovely people in that, but there are many unreconstructed individuals with ideas of how that should be. Now, when I look at your industry, press, right, I see up to very, very recently an industry that had practically zero amount of people of colour in it, right? Now, this is the point. When you got to the royal elements of that, it was even worse, because they were people who totally and utterly orientated themselves to how things were, right? And any change was perceived somehow negatively. For this woman then to come in and to start doing things differently, and to boot be of colour, I don't think went down well.
Well, okay, here's a fun Christmas quiz. Because yes, I did go to school, and I will tell your listeners, yes, with Peter and Zara Phillips, yes, I did. I went to Gordonson, and I have met the Queen, and I did meet the Duke of Edinburgh, and actually he walked in on me in the shower. But that's another story.
Hey, this is. Come on, speak. No, you cannot throw that bombshell out, or is it one that we can do at another time?
No. It's like this is. I mean, it's not defamation if it's the truth, is it? Like,
no, absolutely. If it's the truth, it's the truth.
Like, we'd all come back from a hockey match, like the boarding house that I was in. I mean, you might think that Gordonson was posh, but it was only posh for the posh people, if you know what I mean.
Right, okay.
Like, so the boarding house that I was in was an ex-RAF barracks that was donated to the school when Prince Charles was there. So it was donated to the school in like 1958 because RAF Lossiemouth said that they built their barracks to have like a 7-year life, and it had a 5-year life, and so they donated it to the school. But like I say, in 1958, I was there in like 1999 or whatever. Yeah. Right? And it was still standing, and it was still the boarding house, right?
Well, wasn't that done on purpose? I'm asking you questions now because this is very interesting. Well, wasn't a part of the theory around it that it hardened you and got you right?
Well, maybe, but there was there were perfectly nice, lovely, posh boarding houses for the, you know. But all I'm saying
I
is,
split you guys up. Right,
all I'm saying was, to go back to the original story, right? This particular boarding house,
yeah.
because it was the one that Prince Charles was in when he was there, even
Yes.
though it was then further, like in a later years, it was a girls' boarding house, was one that Prince Philip had a particular interest in, and so much so that they had an official royal toilet in the boarding house that nobody was allowed to use. Right, because in case
because he went to that school as well, didn't he?
Yeah, but just in case the Queen or Prince Philip wanted to go to the toilet while they were sitting there, obviously we just used to use it for smoking and you know other stuff. But anyway, right. So and the walls of this boarding house were so thin that you could bash a hockey stick through the walls to make a hole in it to pass notes through and all the rest of it. But the showers, right? You know, like the difference between a series circuit and a parallel circuit.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So the showers were like in a series circuit. So you turned on hot water on the first tap, right, and then the rest of them ran cold.
Yeah.
So we'd all come back from a hockey match, and we basically all just like bombed into the showers to be like, who can be the quickest to get to the hot tap. So basically, we all just flung all our clothes off as quickly as we possibly could. Legged it into the showers to just try and get like 30 seconds under some warm water. At the same point, the Duke of Edinburgh was just like toddling around doing a royal visit. That's it. Wandered into the shower rooms and they just stood there for like a really, really inappropriate amount of time.
just gazing on all you naked females in there.
Yeah, well, no. You know, and actually we all did that sort of solidarity girl thing where we all just sort of hugged together to like protect ourselves.
No, it wasn't that long, surely.
Well, yeah, no, it was quite a long time. It was
not long enough for you to all wrap together. No, sorry, it wasn't one of those where you walked in. Sorry, and walk out. You say he actually stood there. You have
to be like escorted out.
Oh hell.
Oh, I've got many stories. Anyway, all I was going to say is fun Christmas bingo game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so obviously Prince Andrew's been sort of but you know.
Yes, we know.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what the PC word is, but you know, right? If you were to say, now look, back in the day, Prince Charles did admit to adultery.
Yes.
Right, but yeah, he's still king.
Mm-hmm.
Right. However, if you were to take the sins of the royals in terms of their line of succession,
mm-hmm.
You know, if it were a precedent that Prince Andrew's sort of out of the line of succession because of what he did, but if you were to evaluate everyone on the sort of case by case basis, right, where would we actually get to?
What I would say is this: what Charles did pales into insignificance as to what was generally the rule in the old days. So if you're going to go down that line, it depends how far back you're going to go. In fact, you don't even need to go that far back. The reason why there is a royalty protection, okay, is because Queen Victoria heard that the people protecting her were the special branch, which before it was called the special branch, it was called the Special Irish Branch, because it was designed and brought together to fight the Fenian, which is the Irish Brotherhood. Now we know them as the IRA. Right. So that's why it was brought together to fight this unit. So it had a lot of Irishmen in it because they brought them over from the Royal Irish Constabulary into Scotland Yard and brought them into this thing, Special Branch, in 1883, this new thing that they formed with obviously some English detectives as well. And it was the secret police of the United Kingdom. Right. So Queen Victoria one day, and it also did protection as it did other things like we do, and people moved around between the various bodies. So the Fenian was defeated, and so the Irish bit was dropped, and it was just called the Special Branch. Right. So Queen Victoria hears these guys talking in Irish brogue, and she did have attempts on her life, by the way. There was a couple of attempts made on her life, in fact more than a couple. So she said, "All right, who are these people protecting me?" And he should have on special band. Blah, blah, blah. Right, okay. So she then decreed, "I do not want a secret police protecting me." Right. Now the reason being that she was aware that special branch officer intelligence officers and take notes and look for things that are against the state, etc., etc. And her sons at the time were doing whatever they were doing, which wasn't necessarily always positive. Right? So even the fact there's a royalty protection was down to the fact that they wanted a police that they thought uniform, they weren't in uniform, but uniform body, that they thought would not speak of their secrets of what they do. So to me, the royals have always been doing a whole host of things, which are, in our days, I believe they're quite tame in comparison to what they used to be like.
Yeah, well,
very tame.
But the fact that the Queen took the decision to remove the HRH status for Prince Andrew.
Is that not your people? Is that not your media people who pushed that?
What do you think? Because at the end of the day, it was the Queen that.
I think your media people pushed it. I think she'd have hoped for it to just slide away in a while.
Okay. Well, okay. So if that's all right. So this is like this is like a sort of Christmas like royal bingo card game we're playing, really, isn't it? Like all right. If the media said, okay, look, let's pick on Charles because he's an adulterer. All right, let's pick on Harry because he's married a woman of colour. Okay, let's pick on like Andrew's already out because we've picked on him. Like.
But have they picked on Andrew?
Anne's already taken herself
out. Have they picked on Andrew? You could imagine. Look, don't get me wrong. Now, Andrew is basically being said that he's a paedophile because he supposedly, and I'm saying allegedly, and I don't know, I don't have a clue, has had a sex with a person who is 17 years of age. Right? That does not make him a paedophile in the United Kingdom at all.
Well, no,
once you're over the age of 16 years of age,
surely half the Queens, do you know what I mean? Half the royals back in the day were
correct. But even now, under our laws now today, if you are 16 years of age and you're having sex with somebody, as long as you're not forced, there's no paedophilia at play. You are of a legal age, right? So that's it. So what you're saying is that Andrew isn't a now. The argument was that where he did carry out his action was supposedly in the United States or in the Virgin Islands, where the ages are different, 18 or 21, depending on where you are. Right. Now, if you picked up every male in the United States who've ever had some problem with a person less than 21 years of age, there'd be no room in prison, would there? So what I'm saying is, in some ways, he's a fall guy. But the Queen did it, right? The Queen did it, and at the end of the day, like if rumours be true, he was her sort of favourite son, right? If rumours be true, she didn't strip Charles of his titles when he because he's the next in line
when he admitted to adultery.
Yeah, but that's not an offence, is it? I mean, you can't be stripping people because we wouldn't have any prime ministers left, would we?
Well,
men or women.
But
men or women. You do know the stories of the last prime minister we've had, yeah, both men and women.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Including Liz Truss, yeah.
Absolutely.
Right, okay, because this is your media now talking, not me. I'm just saying allegedly your media is saying something. I don't know what they're saying, but they are saying something. So what I'm saying is, if it's an offence, nobody would be running the country in terms of government.
But like you say, I mean, the Queen took that decision about Andrew, right?
Because the papers pushed her that way.
But also remember as well, though, that okay, it's not an offence legally to us, right, but to the church, okay, of which the is the head of the church.
Absolutely.
Then it is, and surely actually admitting.
But then again, with them,
but surely actually admitting to adultery is more than is worse than saying
They've got that problem. There's
because
priests who.
I mean, historically, like Mary and Joseph, like Mary was 17 or something, wasn't she? Anyway,
Probably 15, 13, 14, 15, whatever. But,
right.
but
So what
the
I'm
point,
saying is, like, if you in the Church of England, surely adultery is the sin and not.
but it isn't, is it? Because you've had a load of people who I think that guy now, not that he's been an adulterer, but has had his time. Look, the reality is that if we start throwing stuff around, we get into trouble from anybody. So I'm not a person who wants to throw stuff around like that. I don't have a clue. The reality is
we are responsible, but we are banter.
Correct. Absolutely. What Andrew's problem was for me is not in what he said he supposedly done, but in the fact that he's a close friend of an individual who was a paedophile, who was running at young girls under the age, who he bribed them with money. But you know something, I'm going to tell you something now on this case. Nobody's speaking about it on this case. You can name several ex-presidents of the United States who've been to that same island.
Right? I bet.
Right? And of course, you do know that one of them was the president before the person we got in now. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you also do know that supposedly the individual that we are talking about, who is supposedly a friend of Andrew, supposedly tried to commit suicide.
Yes.
They then put him on watch and then was able to commit suicide.
Yes.
I just ask the questions, that's all. I don't know what's gone on. I just ask the questions. I'll put the point there. What I'm saying is this is a very wealthy guy, a billionaire, tied to a whole load of other billionaires and powerful people who had his own island, who brought people on them, flew them in. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I'll put it to you. You're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, because these are some of the people. And somebody says to you, listen, I'm going to fly you in my private jet to my island. Yeah. Do you want to come? What do you think? That's all I'm asking you. What do you think? Why is, you can meet the prince, you can meet this, you can do that. I'm just going to fly to my private island.
So this is interesting. And
if you're that person, if it were you.
Okay. What I think is quite interesting is that Ghislaine Maxwell was like.
See, I wasn't putting any names on it, but you are. This is good. Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the truth, isn't it? Like, she was sentenced.
Yep.
But her part in this was the grooming part. It was the reaching out. It was the finding the girls.
But I asked you again. Right. If somebody asked you, do you want to come to a private island on my private jet, right? And you're 17, 18, even 16, 17, 18, 19 years of age, 20, 21, what do you think?
It's
and you've got nothing to offer.
It's gonna,
why are you going? Because I know as a man, I'd be thinking, oh, hang on, what do they want from me?
Exactly. But even more so. But exactly, I know. And again, we're just, this is just banter. I'm just prefacing this with this is just banter. But Ghislaine was finding these girls. She was going to private schools in the US. She was finding schoolgirls on the street at private schools. She was taking them to Bloomingdale's and buying them fancy underwear or buying them like nice shoes or buying them nice handbags or something like that, right? And then she was giving them tickets to go to the private island and telling them that they were going there to give him a massage. Right?
What would that say to me? What would that say to me straight away? If that was said to me,
it's like,
because there's.
Do you know what I mean? Like, show me a 15-year-old girl that's that clueless.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like they knew but at the same time, I am not saying, I'm not victimizing any of these people. Like, I think everything that happened was horrific, and I think that the whole situation is awful, and
neither am I. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw you.
I totally understand. I understand the lure. I completely understand the lure.
That's the point. It's the lure of easy money, and that's where the problem comes. But let me put you in a different context. Same 15-year-old, right, has now been told, you can be a fantastic individual. You can go and help your religion. You can go and have an exciting life with a fighter. We're going to take you and look after you and bring you to a country where you can truly practice your religion. Right? Yep. So you're now 15, exactly the same, and you go over with two mates. And of course, when you're there, you have little choice but to marry one of these guys who is your thing, and then you have babies with them, etc., etc. Yeah. And then the Home Secretary, because the system's lost, Islamic State, and take into account, I've been fighting these people, so I think I can say this. So Islamic State lose this conflict, and now you are there. You've lost one child, if not two, and then the British government says you're no longer British, right? Mm. Now I question, how does that happen? I'm not a Bangladeshi. I've never been to Bangladesh. My parents never sought Bangladeshi heritage for me. How do you take away my nationality from me? My heritage. How do you take it from me? Because effectively what that person's saying is the same ages who are protecting one set of girls, right, who are older, and we're not protecting this person who is younger, right? But we're still, not only are you not doing that, you're actually then saying, and by the way, you can't come back to the country where you're from because you're no longer part of it. You're going to have to go to a country where you've never been, you know nothing about, you've been never taught to be there, you've never had the nationality of it, but we are saying you have that nationality. Now, to me, that smacks exactly the same of that racism. Now, don't get me wrong, I know the fella who did it was himself a man of Pakistani heritage, right? To get on, he's done it. He's stripped her of a nationality. When Jihadi Jack, example, who was a Canadian, right, and British, never had his nationality taken off him, and he was actually a fighter, whereas she wasn't. They took ages for them to even consider taking his nationality off him. Now, this is what I'm saying, where this gets insidious in this system, what we look at, because one person is saying, oh, you don't belong, which, by the way, then opens up the route for everybody who has some parent who is of some other heritage, particularly if you're of colour, right, that you can be said, you don't belong here. So with one stroke of the pen, that Home Secretary, who is a disgrace to himself, right, has taken away the heritage of people who, like myself, have fought for this country or whatever else, right? And taken that away from them by saying, if you do something wrong, we can take from you your Britishness. Right? Whereas if the other person who went to your school, went to your class, been on the dole all his life, who just happens to be white, right? We're not going to take that fella's heritage, that fella's thingy from him, because both his parents happen to be English or British.
Yeah, and also
how does that work?
To flip this back, like you always say when you do your really terrible impressions,
Yeah,
you know, what if we flip this to a council estate in Liverpool?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you see what you've got there is this guy has undermined with one fell swoop of his pen people's Britishness and made it much easier now, because I was one of those people who they went to try and groom to be a member of an organisation. I'm not going to go any further, right? The first thing they will use will say, you see, you're not really a British person. They don't respect you as well. Right?
All right. So to wrap this up as the bigger question, right?
Yes.
Let's say you're a 35-year-old woman who suddenly starts dating an Englishman.
Yeah.
You're from an African and German descent.
Yeah.
You fought for feminist rights all your life. You make your own money.
Yeah.
Done loads of charity work.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Britain want to accept you as a British citizen?
Look, I think it does, depending on who you are. I would suggest that if you come from the Ukraine, right, and don't have an accent, you're going to have no problem whatsoever.
What I'm summarising
You're going
here,
to have no problem.
Is Meghan Markle.
I know exactly what you're summarising, but I'm playing the devil's advocate. I'm saying if you are a Ukrainian, okay, who does not have an accent, right, all day long, you've got no problem, none whatsoever. So this is this is the situation we find ourselves in, and regardless of what Meghan is, and I don't know what Meghan is, and I'm loath to over defend. Not I'll defend her, but over defend her insofar as to say that she hasn't had any. That there's no element of what she's done that, that suggests that she's. But at the same time, but she's definitely no devil. And as far as I'm concerned,
but also, like, we could go into the ins and outs of all of this, but also, like, you know, surely having that African connection back in the royal family is a good thing.
Some people may think so, others may not, and that's a personal preference, which is fair enough. That's up to people. It's a personal preference, but it's when a okay, let's get all technical. Okay, when the fourth estate, okay, the media, right, starts to utilize that negatively, then it's a problem, because that's then as though the people were speaking, or if they're not, it articulates the people along this line. So that's what I'm saying. It might not be that the people think that way, but it's the way to orientate the people. That's the problem with the fourth estate. It's a great idea that the media holds to account the system in a democracy. The problem is that who runs the media and who is the media? That's my question.
And then this circles back to the Prince Andrew conversation, doesn't it? So maybe this is a whole other conversation.
Correct.
Maybe this is a whole other conversation.
Because I know a lot of those people, and I'll end with this one. I know a lot of those people who are the royal correspondents who couldn't wait to rehabilitate Prince Andrew, but show no such, what's the word, compassion to do the same for the other two individuals.
So for your audience, just to think on my little Christmas quiz.
Yep.
If you had to devalue every royal for something that was technically that was technically disrespectful to the Church of England or the throne,
mm-hmm.
Who would actually be next in line? Now, I've worked out the answer. I've worked out what my guess on the answer is, right? And I'm going to leave everyone hanging on this, because I'm going to let you.
Sure.
Because your answer will be different to mine.
Yeah.
I know, because I've worked it out, and your answer will be different to mine, right? But let's make this a quiz. Let's see. Let's see who can match your answer, because your answer will be the right one.
No, it won't be. No, it won't be the right one. It won't be the right one.
No, it will, because
yours is probably the right one. You actually know these people, whereas I don't. So yours might be the right one.
But
and I don't read the tittle tattle on them, so I don't really know. And you're in that media sphere where you're hearing a whole load of things that we never get to hear.
All right, I will share what I've got in terms of the scandals related to the specific royals with you, and you can decide whether or not, like, that.
Okay, that's great. We won't put it on air. We won't put it on air.
we won't put this on air. But you know, maybe we can just put a little Christmas prize on this. Right, I'll let whoever can pick the right person. I'll give them a £5 Amazon voucher.
Yeah, well, let's see them come forward. Let's see what they think.
Let's see who can pick. Because I was actually surprised who.
By the way, are we allowing?
What?
Yes, we are. No, I was just thinking about it. I was just going to say, are we allowing men and women equally?
Yeah, well, we are now.
Because we do now, don't we? We allow it now.
So that's that's why it's interesting, right?
That's not a problem.
That's why it's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. That'll be interesting. That will be very, very interesting, in fact.
So this is my little Christmas quiz for everyone.
Okay, super duper. Well, Fergus, once again, you've been fantastic. You foxed me straight in on that one, which, you brought something to me which I wasn't even thinking about, but it's a nice little subject.
I know, you thought we were going to have a really fluffy chat about, like...
I did. I didn't know what we were going to talk about. You start and I just follow, that's where we go. And it's great. And this is what I love about it, is because you've got the newspaper sentiment. You have the understanding of what people want to know at this very moment. That's the newspaper sentiment. I don't have that. It's not my game. You have it. You understand it. So yeah.
But what I do know is that what I hope, to be honest, what I really hope is that newspapers are following this podcast, because
you're the DAPS agency, aren't you? You are the DAPS.
We are, exactly. We are.
You are the number one agency, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Well, say something about yourself as DAPS, because you never explained it. So just explain it before we leave.
Yeah. I've got this. Oh, do you know what? The way I
put you on the hop for once now. You're now on the hop rather than me.
Yeah, you put me on the hop. I know. No, I love my agency. We set it up a year ago, and we're unashamedly remote working. But we've got the most brilliant people.
You haven't explained what you do yet. Explain to the listeners what you do.
I am a publicist, so I work on the PR side. I do PR and communications, but we also do marketing. We do ethical NFTs, which is exciting, but also baffling to me. We do social media. We do internal comms. We do copywriting. We do all sorts of stuff. I mean, essentially, we're a 360 comms agency, but we work entirely remotely. So through the pandemic, there was no reason for everybody to go into an office, and we just kind of went, okay, right, great, well, let's just all work out a way to efficiently sort of work from home. And
so effectively you have tentacles in all of the media elements then, and the advertising elements, and the I guess even the sort of entertainment entity. So you've got your fingers in all these pies, yeah?
Oh God, yeah. We create podcasts. I mean, like I say, I'm a former journalist. Yeah, absolutely. We've got yes. I mean, fingers in every pie. My child told me a joke today about what's the worst thing about meeting 3 octopi?
Right.
And the answer is how do you shake hands?
Okay, very good.
Well, it's a bit like that, yeah. We're a bit like we're DAPS is we are those 3 octopi. that you can have everything for. But do you know what I mean? I'm so proud of what we've done, because actually we built our business without using social media or without using. We haven't even got a website.
All right. So you're word of mouth, because you're well known.
We built the whole brand from word of mouth, and it's because we know people. I mean, I'm so proud that we know people like you.
Yeah, but you know much bigger fish than I, don't you? You know your editors. You know all these types of people.
But I also know I also know Carlton King.
And on that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave, because if you're putting me up with Rebecca Brooks, then I've got to laugh. She is She is right, or she
my God,
was
David, so-
right in the middle of the mix. She was right up there with everybody. And you're going to put
we could do a whole chat about Rebecca Brooks.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's just one of the sort of people you know. So what I'm saying is you are absolutely connected. And this is why I love working with you. So, ladies and gents, if you're listening, you now know who we're talking about when we say Fergus. It's like, and who that actually is. It's not Joe Soap. It's somebody who is in the middle of the game. As you've heard, gone to the schools with the Royals. Thank you very much for listening, ladies and gents.
And happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, and we'll see you again next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.